They tied the paralyzed Apache girl to the rancher's mailbox as a joke, but he took her in, and the night the rancher found her, the wind was howling so hard it bent the mesquite trees low, rattling his mailbox like a warning bell. He had stepped out with a lantern, annoyed by the noise, expecting to find a loose hinge or a stray coyote. Instead, the light fell on a small shape slumped against the post, wrists bound with baling twine, ankles tied, head hanging forward as if she had already given up on being seen. For one terrible second he thought she was dead. Then she lifted her eyes, dark and steady, and met his. She was no older than 13. Her legs lay twisted beneath her, unmoving. Dust and dried mud caked on her dress. Someone had painted a smile on her face in charcoal, crooked and mocking, and taped a note to her chest that said it was just a joke. The rancher's throat tightened. He had lived alone for years, long enough to know the sound of cruelty when he saw it. He cut the twine with shaking hands, apologizing out loud, though she hadn't accused him of anything. When he tried to lift her, she flinched, not from pain, but from expectation. Her name was Narration, she told him later, in a voice so quiet it seemed borrowed. She was Apache, from a family that had scattered after a winter illness, took her mother and left her unable to walk. The boys who tied her there were drunk on laughter and fear, daring each other to see how far they could go. She had been dragged from the edge of town, tied to the mailbox, because it stood alone on a long dirt road where no one came after dark. They thought someone would find her eventually. They didn't care how long that would be. The rancher wrapped her in a blanket and carried her into his house, feeling the weight of responsibility settle deeper with every step. He washed the charcoal from her face, cooked soup, and called the sheriff. When the deputy arrived, he shrugged and said kids would be kids, that it would be hard to prove anything. Narration listened from the couch, her hands folded in her lap, eyes lowered, as if she had expected nothing else. The rancher felt something break open in his chest. She stayed the night, then another. He built a ramp from scrap wood so she could reach the porch, and fixed an old wheelchair that had belonged to his brother. He learned how to lift her without hurting her, how to read the tightness around her mouth when she was afraid, how to sit in silence without filling it with promises he wasn't sure he could keep. At night, he heard her crying softly and pretended to be asleep, so she could have her grief to herself. Word spread, as it always did. Some people said he was foolish, that trouble followed children like her. Others avoided the ranch altogether. One morning, the mailbox was smashed flat, tire tracks circling it like a threat. Narration saw it and went very still. She whispered that she would leave, that she didn't want to cause more harm. The rancher knelt in front of her and told her she wasn't the harm. He said it until she looked at him again. He taught her to read using old newspapers and feed catalogs. She taught him the names of stars he had never bothered to learn, stories her grandmother used to tell before the sickness came. Slowly the fear loosened its grip. She laughed once, surprised by the sound, and then again, louder. When winter returned, he wrapped her legs in quilts and carried her to the window to watch the first snow. The boys were eventually caught, not because the sheriff tried harder, but because Narration told her story at a town meeting, her voice shaking but unbroken. She didn't ask for punishment. She asked to be seen. The silence afterward was heavier than any sentence could have been. Some people cried, others looked away. The rancher stood behind her, a steady presence she could lean back into if she needed. Years passed. Narration grew stronger in ways that had nothing to do with her legs. She learned to paint, filling canvases with colors so fierce they seemed alive. One of her paintings hung by the mailbox, now repaired and painted bright blue, a reminder that what had been meant as a joke had become a turning point. The rancher watched her one evening, rolling down the porch ramp into the sunset, and realized that taking her in hadn't saved her the way people liked to say. She had saved herself. He had simply been the one who chose not to look away.